Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers changed teams this offseason, and now they're meeting in week one. Let's preview it today on our Locked On Crossover Show.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Jets fans and Steelers fans. It's our first crossover Thursday show of the year. Jets fans, you know me. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets. Steelers fans, Christopher Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers, is here with me today to preview Week 1 action. Steelers at Jets at MetLife Stadium. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, Chris, great to chat with you as always. We did this last October, and as we discussed before we started recording, last October we said the last time the Jets and Steelers had played was 2022. And if you had told us in 2022 that quarterback matchup would have been Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson, neither of us would have believed it. But we have one-upped ourselves this year.
How the turns have tabled, John. This is some wild stuff, man. To go from, Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson, that's crazy, to Justin Fields versus Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is a pretty wild thing. But it's been interesting to see how these situations have developed. Of course, Justin Fields was in line to kind of start against the Jets, but then that was the game that Russell Wilson took over. And then Justin Fields is never seen again, outside for a couple trick plays for the Steelers. He goes to the Jets in the offseason. The Steelers then go and get Aaron Rodgers, who the Jets cut. And it's been really interesting to watch here in Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers fitting in with the organization, and the national media has been showing up regularly what's Aaron Rodgers like with the Steelers now. How has Justin Fields' early days been? Just getting a sense of how he's fit in with the team and where he is with this offense.
I think the teammates have bought into him as the starting quarterback, but the training camp period and the exhibition season has been uneven. There were plenty of days where the offense struggled. In the preseason, the first exhibition game against the Packers, things went well. Starting offense was out there for one series. Fields led them right down the field for a touchdown. Actually had a really nice scramble to score it. The second preseason game was not as good. He only completed one pass for 4 yards. Now, he only played 2 series. He did leave the Jets to a field goal in one of those 2 series, but it created a bit of controversy because, Chris, as you may know, the New York media is not exactly a group of people who keep things in perspective. A couple bad exhibition series will get people panicking. I think it's tough to say, though, because this has always been my read on training camp. And I'm not sure if you have the same read. I think the passing game is easier to judge than the run game because there's not as much physicality in training camp. And this Jets offense is going to be based on the run game. It's going to be based on Justin Fields. There's going to be a lot of design quarterbacks runs with this offense, and the Jets are going to use their running backs. I mean, of the skill positions, the Jets are strongest at running back, much stronger than wide receiver or tight end. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how things play out week 1, because we haven't really seen the true Jets offense yet, and we can't see it until this season begins. Now, let me turn the question back to you. How have things gone with Mr. Rodgers in Pittsburgh?
It's interesting because when he first he signs at the start of Steelers minicamp, which is after rookie camp and OTAs, and then throughout minicamp he just watches, and so we don't get to see Aaron Rodgers do anything. We're like, okay, so I guess we got to wait another month until training camp. So when we wait, training camp comes, and much like you were talking about, the defense dominates early on. He's not getting passes off because they're getting swatted at the line of scrimmage. The defense is blitzing left and right. The offense is just getting thrashed in the early days of training camp. But then after that second week, something clicked, and the details. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, and you know how the disdain look that he can throw a receiver when they run the wrong route or they don't do something accurately. But he would do that with guys like Roman Wilson and less Calvin Austin because he does his routes well. But he would point to guys like, hey guys, need this, need that. Scotty Miller, get this way. And by week 2 of training camp, the offense started scoring back, and the defense was like looking around like, wait a second, where'd this come from? And there's been some synergy with the passing game. DK Metcalf and him have grown a good connection, in my opinion. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch because we didn't get to see it at all during the preseason. Aaron Rodgers played no preseason games. But Aaron Rodgers has kind of taken a step back from where he was calling more of the shots in New York. He got his coordinator. He got his players, Devontae Adams, Allen Lazard, all these guys. There's not a single receiver they've brought in that used to work with him like that. And he's even said, like, hey, I'm happy to be part of the process, be one of the guys. And so far, he's fit into that role pretty well, and he's just excited, and the team seems excited about him. They're just like, this guy seems so laid back, so chill, and he's Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP guy. He could be doing a lot more, and he's not. And I think that's the interesting play is how he's fit in with the team so smoothly. But the question that I have, and I think a lot of people have nationally, is how far does that go if the team starts to lose? So, like, when they start to face their first adversity, how does that handle itself? But there's a lot of confidence that this team has in Aaron Rodgers to conduct this offense that has a young offensive line, a lot of young playmakers, and honestly is going to be doing a different version of what it's looked like from the past several years. And we'll get more into this when we do matchups, but like, they're throwing the ball to the middle part of the field. And if you're a Steelers fan, you're hearing that, you're like, I don't believe it until I see it, because the Steelers have avoided the middle of the field like it's a minefield. In the last year with Russell Wilson, the year before with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, the year before that with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. And, I think you got to go back to like Ben Roethlisberger, maybe even in 2018, when they kind of effectively used the middle part of the field. And so there's a sense that I think this is going to be a completely new look offense from the Steelers. I talked to Aaron Rodgers actually yesterday, Wednesday, in the Steelers locker room, and he told me when I asked him about attacking the middle part of the field, he said, I feel like this is the best tight end room I have ever had. And talking about Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, even Connor Hayward, Cam Hayward's younger brother, who it does have really good hands. I think that he's excited to work with that, and I'm just really intrigued to see, okay, I've seen it in practice. I've seen the theory. I've seen the concepts on the chalkboard. I want to see how this competes against an NFL defense.
And Chris, let me throw this question out. Which of these two quarterbacks do you think is in a better position to succeed this year?
It's tough because you got to see how everything formulates. I just feel like Justin Fields, if the run game really clicks for the Jets this year, then I'd say Justin Fields. But I feel like there needs to be some extra gelling for this run game with this offensive line. The unfortunate injury to Elijah Vera Tucker, a big blow to that, because he was their most experienced of their top first-round pick guys that are going to be on that offensive line. And I think that if that run game doesn't take off, Justin Fields is going to be not as in a good in less of a good situation. I think Aaron Rodgers might have the better situation because the Steelers' offensive line, also young, they're not going to be tasked with just trying to plow through people. It's gonna be up to Aaron Rodgers to say, hey, we're gonna have a balanced offense for you. You got Jaylen Warren and Caleb Johnson, the rookie, behind you to hand the ball off to. This line will run a bit, but there's going to be a lot of matchups that they like with their double tight end sets and even triple tight end sets. And I kid you not, John, you're going to see some 14 personnel situations with this offense. But I just think with the weapons available to Aaron Rodgers, and also the fact that the offense isn't going to need to carry the Steelers. They still have TJ Watt. Jalen Ramsey's going to be a huge part of this defense. Cam Hayward's going to play in this game, despite any noise you hear from the outside. I think that this is going to be a team that's still defensively led, but this might be a more efficient version of the Steelers offense than we've seen since Ben Roethlisberger pre his elbow injury.
So for me, I think it's an open question. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the Jets' new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, because I think that Fields can succeed if he's in a specific type of offense. And that's an offense that really gets creative with the way they use the quarterback in the run game. And the Jets brought in Engstrand. He was Detroit's passing game coordinator this offseason. He worked with Aaron Glenn on Dan Campbell's coaching staff in Detroit. What was interesting is Fields wasn't just the Jets' number one target at quarterback. He was really their number one target, period, in free agency. And I can't think of two quarterbacks who are more different in style than Jared Goff and Justin Fields. So Engstrand comes from Detroit, but I don't think we're going to see an offense that resembles Detroit at all, because why would you go get Justin Fields if you're going to run the Jared Goff offense? So
Right.
I'm interested to see what Tanner Engstrand has in store. I think if Engstrand lives up to the billing, lots of Jets fans are optimistic about him. Maybe Justin Fields can, find a home in New York. Now, Jets fans and Steelers fans, you've heard us talk about Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields, but there are some other key matchups that will decide the fate of this game. Chris and I are going to get to them as we continue here on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers. Our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more time every order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Now, of course, we haven't yet started the season, so let's go to the past. And for the Jets and Steelers, there's one player I can think of who delivered in a big way. It was Alan Faneca, a Hall of Fame guy, spent most of his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the Jets signed him in 2008 as a free agent. Part of some really good offensive lines. He was part of a team that went to the AFC Championship game for the Jets in 2009. So I think that's a player Jets fans and Steelers fans can agree delivered in a big way. And just like Alan Faneca delivered for the Jets and the Steelers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers. Chris, we do this often. Jets and Steelers have been pretty frequent opponents the last couple of years.
Which is weird, right?
Yeah, it is. But I'm happy because I always enjoy doing these shows with you. You become like an honorary member of like my AFC East family. So it's been a lot of fun. Let's talk key matchups. Give me a matchup you're looking at that could help decide this game.
I think one matchup is two prominent first-round picks by both of these teams that I think I'm really excited to see, and that's Will McDonald versus Troy Fautanu. Will McDonald, the guy that the Jets were okay letting Broderick Jones get passed on when the Steelers traded up ahead of them to get Broderick Jones. They were like, that's fine. We really wanted Will McDonald, and he's come into his own a little bit. I've liked what I've seen out of him, but he's not going to line up against Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones is moving from right tackle to left tackle this season. He'll match up a lot with Troy Fautanu, their first-round pick last year. Now, Fautanu missed all of last season. He had a knee injury that took him out for the year, and that was unfortunate for him. But what you saw with Fautanu was in this past training camp, he caught up quick. His hand placement, his footwork were really sharp, and I'm going to be intrigued to see these two really good athletes, guys that are prominent, that should be prominent forces in the AFC for the next several years, going at it. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, there are lots of connections in this game, and arguably Aaron Rodgers is the reason the Jets drafted Will McDonald instead of Broderick Jones, because heading into the 2023 draft, the Jets had the 13th pick, and part of the Aaron Rodgers trade was the Jets and Packers swapped picks. The Jets moved from 13 to 15. The Steelers then jump in front of the Jets at 14, and nobody from the Jets would ever admit it, but it seemed like the consensus that the Jets would have taken Broderick Jones if he was there when they picked, and instead they ended up with Will McDonald, who had a double-digit sack season last year. So that's the type of thing that may have worked out for the Jets. I'll give you one matchup that I have my eye on. It's going to be Alex Highsmith versus Olu Fautanu. Fautanu was the first-round pick a year ago for the Jets. He kind of struggled in the early part of last season. He started the year as a backup because the Jets had Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, but Tyron Smith suffered a midseason injury. Fautanu stepped in and played really solid ball down the stretch before he left the lineup for an injury of his own. The reason I have my eye on this one is I think Fautanu is not going to be getting a lot of help from the Jets, because on the other side, you're going to have TJ Watt versus Armand Membou in Membou's first career game. And the Jets are going to have to send all the help to Membou. And that means Fautanu is going to be on an island. Highsmith's a very good pass rusher in his own right. I think in an ideal world, a second-year tackle in game one of year two, you'd like to help him a little bit more against a pass rusher of this caliber, but that's not a luxury the Jets will have in this game. And, there are lots of benefits, I think, to drafting tackles back-to-back years in the first round. I think that the pros far outweigh the cons, but one of the few cons is that Olu Fashanu is going to have to hold up one-on-one in this game, and that'll be a huge point to determine whether or not the Jets win this game or the Steelers take it. How about another matchup, Chris?
I'm interested to see Garrett Wilson versus the Steelers secondary, because I can tell you right now, the Steelers are not just going to line Jalen Ramsey up outside. In fact, Jalen Ramsey's kind of been the team's top slot corner, and then when they go into base, he drops back as sort of a free safety option. But Garrett Wilson last year played 780 snaps out wide, about 240 snaps in the slot. I think the Steelers are fully prepared for if Garrett Wilson lines up on the outside, that's Joey Porter or Darius Slay's guy, and if he lines up in the slot, that's Jalen Ramsey's guy. And I'm going to be intrigued to see how he does against them and how he works with them, because the Steelers secondary looks aggressive, whereas in the past several years they've kind of been like a mostly zone coverage defense because they've had like two cornerbacks on their roster that are starting that they're just not overly confident to win a lot of their man-to-man matchups. Those days are gone. Jalen Ramsey, they're confident running stride for stride with guys. Same thing for Joey Porter. Same thing for Darius Slay, and they appreciate their safety platoon right now. They have Juan Thornhill, Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott kind of rotating around back there as well. So you're going to see a lot of man coverage, and I'm going to love watching Garrett Wilson go up against, because I think that he's one of the better young receivers in the NFL, and he's going to get a chance to really shine. And look, him and Jalen Ramsey are no strangers. They went toe to toe last year. So I think that Garrett Wilson versus really the Steelers cornerback room is going to be key for this too, because Justin Fields, for all the running the Jets want to do, will need to hit some big passes in this game. There's going to be plays where, hey, they just don't get the push that the line wanted to get in a certain situation. And they're going to, hey, 3rd and 7, we got to throw the ball downfield. Can Garrett Wilson win on one-on-one that gives Justin Fields a clean look at his top receiver? That's going to be a key asset to this game.
And this is my educated guess. I think you're going to see more Garrett Wilson in the slot this year than you did last year, just from the standpoint Devontae Adams is not here anymore. And Devontae Adams took up a pretty big share of the slot targets for the Jets last year. So if I was making an educated guess, I think, you'll see more of I think it might be more of a 50-50 split than you saw with Wilson last year, where he was mostly living on the outside. For my other matchup, I'm going to look at the Steelers' number one receiver playing his first game in Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf, going up against Sauce Gardner. And Sauce Gardner just got a big new contract. This will be his first test as the newly crowned highest paid cornerback in the NFL. The Jets are running a new defense this year, Chris. Robert Saleh is gone. Jeff Ulbrich is gone. Aaron Glenn is in. Saleh and Ulbrich, they like to play a lot of the zone. They like to rush 4. They like to give their corners help. Aaron Glenn runs a different style defense. Aaron Glenn likes to blitz. Aaron Glenn likes to play one-on-one on the outside. Sauce Gardner is the type of corner who has the skill set to really thrive as a press man corner. There's another aspect here. The Jets lost their number 2 corner, DJ Reed, in free agency to Detroit. DJ Reed was an excellent number 2 corner. DJ Reed was the type of corner you could actually feel comfortable leaving one-on-one against most teams' number 1 receivers. Maybe not every single number 1 receiver, but most of them he felt okay. So in years past, Sauce Gardner could go left, DJ Reed could go right. You would not really be all that worried about the matchup. This year, the Jets' number 2 corner is Brandon Stevens, a free agent import from Baltimore. We'll see how it goes. I'm a bit of a skeptic of this signing, but one thing I will say is that I don't think you want Brandon Stevens one-on-one against DK Metcalf all that much. I think you want Sauce Gardner taking Aaron Rodgers as number 1 option in his first game in Pittsburgh. Now ahead here. There. All right, well, ahead here on our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers, we're going to talk about the keys to victory. What do the Jets need to do to win? What do the Steelers need to do to win? That's ahead here on crossover Thursday. Locked On Jets, Locked On Steelers. Our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won the 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Awards more than anybody else. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. All right, looking ahead, Jets, Steelers on FanDuel. The Steelers 2.5-point road favorites in this one, and an over-under of only 38.5 points. So low scoring expected at the Meadowlands on Sunday. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. It is Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Chris Carter, the host of Locked On Steelers. Jets and Steelers open the 2025 regular season. I think I can speak for Chris when I say I'm excited to have the offseason finally behind us. It's been a really long time since we've seen these teams play for real. Chris, give me your keys to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, one key is they have to be able to stop the run in this game. That was one of the key elements that they talked about being better at the end of last season. When they faced the Ravens in the playoffs, the Ravens almost got 300 rushing yards on them, which was just obscene for the Steelers because they were one of the NFL's better run defenses last year. But to answer that, they replenished the defensive line. They got rid of guys like Larry Ogunjobi. They drafted Derek Harmon, who won't play in this game. He's dealing with a knee injury. But they drafted a guy in Y.A. Black, a fifth rounder, but a guy who has been very impressive in training camp, and I think we'll get tons of snaps in this game. They brought in Dan Aquale from the Patriots. They've brought in guys there, and I think their big thing is, especially when it comes to running quarterbacks and their chances to use QB options, they have to take on double teams better than they did against the Ravens last year. And so that's going to be a key matchup that I think is going to be huge on both sides. Can the Jets win their double teams, get the Steelers interior linemen off the ball, and can they chip to the Steelers backers? Because if Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, the Steelers inside linebackers that'll be starting in this game, if they're not able to get clean looks, it's going to open up more space for Breece Hall and Justin Fields to run QB options, to get loose, to hit their holes, and to start setting a good tone with the run game. But if they're left clean, those are two athletic linebackers who will jump into the backfield and bring you down quick, fast, and in a hurry. So I want to see, can the Steelers' run defense show that they're able to do things that they weren't doing late last year that ended their season? That's going to be a big matchup and a big key for the Steelers to achieve. What's one key for you, John?
Do not let TJ Watt destroy this game. Last year when these teams played in October, it was an ugly night for the New York Jets. These teams played on Sunday Night Football. Jets got off to a good start in the game. They actually were up 15-6 late in the first half. A Rodgers interception right before halftime kind of turned it around. Steelers turned that into points. But one of the few things that went right for the Jets that night was they held TJ Watt in check. Todd Downing, who was then their offensive coordinator, had an expression, 4 hands on every play. They were double teaming him practically every play. Armand Membou, as we discussed earlier, is making his first NFL start. And I think Membou's got a ton of potential. I think he's going to be a very good tackle in this league, but he showed in preseason that there is some work that needs to be done on his technique. He's not a finished product yet. And going up against a guy like TJ Watt when you're not a finished product is dangerous. I mean, I'll just say it. I said it the other day on my show. If TJ Watt gets one-on-one against Armand Membou, TJ Watt's going to win. He's going to dominate. So the Jets need to give Membou plenty of help, because if they don't, TJ Watt will destroy this game for the New York Jets. Chris, do you have another key?
Absolutely. I'll flip it to the other side of the lines, and that's the Steelers' offensive line against Quinnen Williams in that defensive front, because the Steelers' offensive line, like the Jets, is young. They have a first-round pick in Broderick Jones in his third year. Troy Fautanu, first-round pick in his second year. Zach Frazier at center, a second-round pick in his second year. Mason McCormick, fourth-round pick in his second year. You throw in a veteran like Isaac Seumalo, who's been around the league several years now. But that's a group that they've shown a better collective effort in the pass protection game throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and that's going to be huge. But they're also going to show that ability in the run game, and that's not something the Steelers really tested out too much in the preseason. When I asked Arthur Smith, the Steelers offensive coordinator, about that, he said, "Hey, we got some things dialed up that we think we're excited to show." And I think the part of this is the Steelers didn't want to show their hand. They want teams to kind of guess what the Steelers are going to come at you with, and I think part of that is how they're going to run the football. Now, the Steelers, I think, want to be a wide zone team with the skill set that they have in the fast Jaylen Warren, who got signed to an extension this week. And I think that's something that they want to do. But I also see that this team, one thing Arthur Smith boasts about, he said this is the most athletic offensive line in football. He says that, from left tackle to right tackle, every single position on the Steelers offensive line can pull and effectively hit in space. And so my big thing for the Steelers will be, can you contain Quinnen Williams? Can you get after those linebackers? And can you set a tone where the run game gets going? And then off of that, you can start to build that passing rhythm and so on and so forth.
My key for the Jets might be a little counterintuitive, but I think the Jets need to make big plays in the passing game in this one. Jets are going to be a run team. They're probably one of the heaviest run teams in the league, but everybody knows that. And I think going into week one, the Steelers' game plan is likely to be focused on taking away the run. And the Steelers, I think, have a pretty good run defense to begin with. A lot of talented players up front, at least. I've said on Locked On Jets that I think the Jets might want to come out throwing the football, because I do think that there are going to be some opportunities early in the game. The other aspect of this game is that it's week one, which means you've had extra time to kind of perfect your scripts. You've had extra time to really prepare the plays that you're going to run early in the game and try and get them to a point where you're running them to perfection. This is an opportunity you won't have most weeks. So everybody knows the Jets are going to have to run the ball effectively to win, but I think in this game they have to produce big splash plays in the passing game. Do you have one more clue, Chris? One more clue, Chris.
I'm going to be intrigued by this. I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers versus the Jets middle of the field. Like we talked about, Aaron Rodgers is excited to do that. And that's something that's not just a new phenomenon. I was watching that all throughout training camp, the Steelers attacking the middle part of the field, not just with their tight ends, but with shallow under routes where you get like a shallow cross from a Calvin Austin who runs a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. Same thing for Roman Wilson. And then occasionally they'll run deeper routes, but then when they do that, they open up space for the tight ends. The Steelers are going to run layered concepts that attack the middle part of the field that force Andre Cisco and the Jets safeties, as well as the Jets linebackers, to have to read, communicate, and attack at the right times. And if they bite at the wrong moments, Aaron Rodgers, can he attack them, force them, manipulate the defense a little bit, and get some openings there? That's going to be a huge part of this game. I think this year, while the Steelers' offensive line is young and is forming, I think that there's going to be a concerted effort to pass to set up the run, especially early on this year. And if the Jets aren't able to slow down a middle of the field passing attack that gives the Steelers options like Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, maybe even DK Metcalf, but other guys over the middle, and that allows them to move the ball, that's going to set the stage for the Jets to be worried about, okay, what concept's coming next? And all of a sudden, the Steelers are running their wide zone at you, and you're a step behind because you're worrying about the pass game. I think that's why it's got to be huge for Aaron Rodgers to set that up in this game. He talked about how he feels like he has the best tight end room he's ever had in his NFL career. I think he's excited for it. And when I talk to guys like even Scotty Miller, the team's fourth wide receiver, he was like, listen, Aaron Rodgers is that guy. He's the guy that can make people go where he wants them to go on defense because he knows how to manipulate you and he studies you. And I think that's where the Steelers have to get another big win for this game. What say you for your key?
I think it's the Jets defenders need to disrupt the Steelers receivers early in their routes, because one thing we saw in New York, and it goes back to his Green Bay days, Rodgers is very demanding on his receivers. He wants his receivers to run very precise routes. He wants them to be at a certain spot at a certain time. And that actually created problems with Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson's a guy who kind of freelances on his routes. He gets open, but Garrett Wilson kind of like wants to have a little bit of freedom the way he runs routes. First game with new receivers, it sounds like they've done a pretty good job getting on the same page in training camp. But when the first real game comes, that's the test. I think the Jets want to make sure they're disruptive. That you use your ability to contact the receivers in the first 5 yards, try and throw those guys off their routes and, maybe throw off Rodgers' internal clock a little bit. Chris, do you have a prediction for this game? We don't necessarily need to predict the final score, but do you have a prediction for this one?
I think, like you hinted at during our FanDuel read, I think this game is closer to the under when it comes to how it scores. I won't give my final prediction, but I do think that this is a close defensive game where both teams' defenses get after it. Both teams try to run the ball unsuccessfully a lot in this game, and then it's going to come down to which quarterback can make the smarter decision late in a big moment. And I think that's going to be a tough thing to balance, but we'll see as it moves forward. But I do think this game is not a cakewalk for either side. I think that both teams have invested a lot in their trenches to be good there, and I'm eager to see which team wins out on those trenches to set the tone for the game.
I'm with you. I'm going the under here. I think that both of these teams, new quarterbacks, lots of new aspects of this offense, of these offenses, and just the general week one vibe where you see it in the NFL now across the league, where because I think maybe it's just like training camps aren't as intense as they used to be. Maybe it's like teams don't really play their starters all that much in the exhibition season. Offenses tend to not be very crisp in week one. And I think this makes the game really tough to predict because week one has a lot of like really random events that happened. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the 6 Brady Belichick Super Bowls, they lost week one 3 of those years. So it's really tough to make a prediction, but I do think the under is going to hold. I think that, these teams, I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. And I think, it may come down to the classic, who wins the special teams battle, who avoids turnovers. That could be the decisive factor. Chris, it's always great to talk with you. I feel like I can talk football with you all day. I feel like we're going to stop recording. We'll probably talk football like for another half hour after this. So I hope the Jets and Steelers play each other again really soon. It's always a pleasure.
Same here, John. It's always great to be on with you. You do a great job with Locked On Jets, and this is a lot of fun. But hey, we have a lot of great hosts at Locked On Podcast Network, so get ready to check out all crossover Thursdays all throughout this year.
All right, well, Jets fans, Steelers fans, we hope you enjoyed our crossover show today. I'm John Butchko of Locked On Jets. He's Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Enjoy your Thursday, and tune into Locked On Jets and Locked On Steelers tomorrow. We'll both have great Friday shows for you. Talk to you then.